To start off the video, I'm gonna ask a question to all longtime Fae players out there. Have you ever made a +10 project or have used a character for a very long time because they're really good or even your favorite, but then come to realize a couple years later, and in this current day and age, they kinda don't matter as much anymore because they purely rely on either new arcane weapons or new skills. And you know, the new skills I can understand because they constantly make new upgraded skills from older skills. But personal skills are gonna be kind of difficult because they are, you know, personal to a character. And you know, if they keep making newer units with better personal skills, then these older units will fall out, unless they obviously use their arcane weapons or even echo skills. But I don't like that, in my opinion. That makes an old hero kind of generic, if you ask me. It might sound crazy what I'm saying, but that's just my opinion. So to me, that kind of does beg the question though. If they added Rerefines to older heroes, how would they look like, and would that fix them? Yes, we're doing yet another video about Rerefines. Like, you know, the first one actually did pretty well, I think, in my opinion. Considering that my channel is dead, but nonetheless, we got more Rerefines to show you. Or at least I have more Rerefines to show you. Well, I say we because I personally have not chosen who gets a Rerefine in this video. As you can see in the thumbnail, there's 10, and they're pretty, like, not in order from what I did previously, because the first one, I did the first 6 heroes to get Rerefines, or Refines even, so I just Rerefined them, and I was originally going to go down the line from oldest to newest to just Rerefine them, but in my head I was thinking maybe that wouldn't really, you know, I feel like people would want to see characters they actually care about. I'm not saying that these older heroes don't deserve a Rerefine, but you know, if some people in the community want me to do someone specifically, it's gonna take a while until I get to them. You get what I'm saying? So right now, I've basically asked a couple of Fehtubers in the community who they would want to see Rerefined, and I got obviously from the thumbnail you've probably seen the 10 that I've gotten so far. So we're gonna do that, and for the future, if you guys want me to do more Rerefines, leave in the comments who do you want to see, you know? I'm open to do basically anyone that has or that is outdated, you know? I'll go out of my way to make them as good as possible in, you know, in the standard that they are restricted to, because I don't want to go crazy with like a demote character, you know? I kind of want to keep the Fae mindset into consideration, because these refines are obviously not crazy, but they are still, you know, really good. So with that being said, let me actually start off with the first one, recommended by a good friend of the channel. She's actually been on 2 of my favorite videos, if you've seen them. It is Rocket Gal. Now, she has actually recommended me to Rerefine Echidna and Female Morgan. So I'm gonna start off with Echidna first. As you can see, Echidna comes with the Western Axe. In my opinion, it kind of is already a pretty good weapon, but let me explain to you guys what it does. It grants +4 to all stats, it heals 7 HP after combat, it also gives 30% damage reduction from the very first attack, because it is not including brave hits, and it also has the reflex built into it. Whilst the Refine gives another +4 to all stats, the unity effect, and even breath. Now, here's the thing. The Refine is pretty good, I'm not gonna lie. The base effect, however, I feel like her weapon stays relevant because of the reflex effect, you know? Like, let's also not forget, one of the best demote weapons, or, you know, inheritable weapons, is the Gehenna Lance. Why? Because of the, you know, the insane amount of damage reduction that it has, you know, for a demote weapon, and also has reflex built into it. So with that being said, it actually stays up to date with the current meta, like, you know what I'm saying, because we obviously have so many effects that can reduce damage, and obviously with a lot of damage reduction effects, you can obviously stack them with the reflex, so it kind of works together in a way. So it's actually amazing. So in my opinion, her weapon is already pretty good, So I personally don't think that she needs an insane, like, top tier upgrade from, you know, if you compare it to like one of the first 6 heroes to get refined. They literally have like 2 effects, and now I just gave them like almost 10 or something. So I don't think that Echidna should get a million effects more, but, you know, an obvious upgrade would be pretty good for her. Now, the base effect grants +5 to all stats, 20 true damage, 40% damage reduction to all first attacks, not all attacks, just the first attacks, including the brave hits. She still has the reflex effect and also 7 HP heal after combat. It's just a slight buff. The 20 true damage is there. The damage reduction being 40% now is really nice. It still is locked to only the first attacks, which you could argue is, you know, not insanely strong of an upgrade, but I feel like that effect is more so based on the reflex, so I just kept it first attacks as it is. The Refine, however, grants breath and the status effect that makes follow-up attacks harder, which I'm just going to call like half frozen. She will give that to herself and allies within 2 spaces of her, and then she herself gets +5 to all stats, the full unity effect still, and 15 true damage reduction on all attacks. Now, obviously, why am I now doing 15 true damage reduction on all attacks instead of just the first attacks? Because, realistically speaking, the 15 true damage and the 20 true damage on all attacks is like the standard for D-mode heroes, or not even D-mode heroes, like 5-star heroes even, like just any kind of hero nowadays. That is the norm for them. The 40% damage reduction for the reflex specifically, I kept it first attacks because it's, you know, based on reflex. I don't want to go absolutely crazy apply to all attacks because that would make her insanely strong. But in a way, I kind of compensated in a way because I gave her the half frozen effect, and that actually does complement the first attack damage reduction well, because if the foe can't make a follow-up attack, then there is no need to have the damage reduction on all attacks. To be fair, it will be kind of difficult to do that because there are so many effects that can give a guaranteed follow-up attack, or even a potent follow-up attack, if it's either 50% or 100 or whatever the percentage is. But the whole idea really is to reflect the first damage you take and reflect it back. What did I say? I meant reduce the first damage you take and reflect it back. Now, what I like to do with making Rerefines, I also like making builds that work with it. So obviously, you can see here, I actually, on the left, you see the build in action, and in the middle, you can see the build with all stats modifications applied. That takes account from skills, from the weapon, all that kind of stuff. It takes it all into account. Now, with that being said, with the special Arc Rival, she now gets a total of 64% damage reduction on first attacks. And, you know, because of Rise Above, Null, Sea of Void, and Faith, giving all flat damage reduction, she gets up to 44 damage reduction on top of that, with the Western Axe equipped, obviously. So, realistically, that's pretty strong already. 64 damage reduction and 44 flat damage reduction, and also having Reflex is insanely strong to have. It's really good. And I also gave her, obviously you can see that I gave her Null, Sea of Void in this encounter, just so that she can actually counter, because it's pretty important to counter with Reflex, you know? Because if you're going to reduce a lot of damage, you might as well deal that damage back to them. That's just the idea of that. I also gave her the Roy Ring, because, honestly, the Miracle Effect works extremely well with Reflex, because it helps you survive attacks you normally wouldn't. And for damage reduction percentage things, it actually works better, because even though you're reducing, or you're keeping your health at 1 HP because you're not gonna, because of the Miracle Effect, the damage reduction from the percentage is still being taken account, so that actually does matter for that. So if you take like 1,000,000 damage, it still is 64% of 1,000,000, even though you didn't take that much damage. It's just that you are at 1 HP. With that being said, I feel like this would be a really strong build for a D-mode. And the weapon upgrade is also pretty nice. It's not going crazy. Do I think that she, like, is similar to some of the newer heroes? Maybe. Maybe she's closer to, like, an Emblem Roy, even though she quite literally isn't, but you get the point. She is a little tank in terms of of this build, you know? She can reduce a lot of damage or reflect it back. So it does work pretty well. Next up, we got Female Morgan, also recommended by Rockyall, like I said. Now, Female Morgan is an interesting one, because her base effect grants her +4 to all stats, but it's under a visible res condition at the start of combat. Now, you can already see that her base res is 40. 40 res is okay, it's not great, but here's the thing. I also gave her 35 flowers in this image, in this, this base kit. So, realistically, she only has 33 res. Now, 33 res for a res condition, not great at all. She's barely gonna proc that, And I think some people will even remember, back when she came out, she was kind of a pretty good tank. She was a pretty good tank against ranged heroes, especially mages, because of her reasonable res, So this this weapon even doesn't really complement her that much. It gives her more attack and speed, which is nice, but her attack and speed isn't that high either way, And the Rerefine tries to be more leaning towards the offense, giving essentially drive attack speed, a joint drive attack speed +3, It's really not good, if you ask me. It's really mid. So, obviously this weapon needs an upgrade, because for someone who had good defenses, her weapon is everything but defensive, you get me? What I've done is I actually went more with the idea that the weapon is called Father's Tactic. Now, Father's Tactic, the father obviously being Robin, male Robin. So it's gonna be male Robin's tactics in a way. So the weapon provides the Raven Tome effect, which we obviously saw that with legendary male Robin. He does come with the Raven Tome in the Refine, so I decided to give Morgan that. I also gave Morgan null hexblade essentially, because if she does want to make use of her res, she obviously needs to make sure that her res is the main show for that defensive capabilities. And if there's a dragon or someone with adaptive damage, her res doesn't matter anymore, because the defense will be used instead. So I obviously added that. I also gave her +5 to all stats without any res condition, because her res is not high enough to even remotely get close to that. So she now gets it flat out +5. She also gets 20 true damage and 7 HP heal after combat. Pretty standard stuff, not too crazy. But for the Refine, I did go a little bit crazy, I'm not gonna lie. I kind of did go with the idea with the offense, and I also went with the idea of, again, male Robin. So for allies within 3 rows and 3 columns, they will get +5 to all stats. They will also get the Unity effect, which is referencing Grand Strategy from legendary male Robin. She will also grant breath and speed-based no follow-up, and specifically speed-based no follow-up is the offensive part of the weapon, so I kind of still want that offensive capability to be there, although I obviously made it all stats instead of just attack speed, so we gotta add some way. So I feel like no follow-up is pretty good for an offensive effect, considering that the prior effect gave attack and speed is kind of important for no follow-up, or speed-based no follow-up even. She herself gets +10 to all stats. She also gets the Unity effect, but she also gets 7 true damage and 40% damage reduction on all attacks during combat. She also gets the breath effect and also no follow-up, just not under a speed condition, because I personally don't think she also doesn't have the high speed for it. So, all in all, I feel like this weapon is pretty good. The 40% damage reduction I added mainly because, I just mentioned the fact that she needs to be a bit more defensive. 7 true damage reduction is obviously not going to cut it, so 40% on top of that is going to help her out a lot. I obviously mentioned the Unity effect from Grand Strategy. It's a nice little reference to have, and the Raven Tome is also a nice little reference to the male Robin having almost every time like a Raven Tome effect in almost every alt at least. I don't think it's every alt now that I think about it, it's only his legendary and his base version, but you get the point. If I want to make that an idea, and it's called Father's Tactic, we might as well do that. For a build, I did go a little bit on the supportive side, not more so on the defensive side, because there aren't really many defensive skills for ranged flyers, and especially mages even. So you can obviously see that there's Ice Edge, which actually does pretty... The +5 to all stats does proc more often because of the Raven Tome effect. So if you go against a red or colorless foe, you will get the +5 to all stats from Ice Edge, which is nice. It's a nice little, neat little effect to have. It makes the weapon triangle a bit more important. Now, obviously with the Unity effect given to, or what am I saying? Sorry, because of the Unity breath and no follow-up effect that she's given from the weapon, adding Crux and Aerial Detect further, upgrades her support capabilities. Her res is like 51, which is not great, if you ask me. Obviously, we have like Harmonic Micaiah, who I think just has 47 res base. I could be wrong on that. I don't remember exactly. The point is, she doesn't have the most res, but she could still make use out of it. So essentially this entire kit allows you to deal more damage, like around 50 extra damage, or 128, I believe, almost. Because the special proc with all that res and Aria even is going to make her deal a lot of damage. That's going to be really strong. I also gave it a Corn Ring because it's a nice defensive option. And also added the Squad Ace because we need to upgrade that res, like I said, because for visible res checks from Aerial Detect, or Detect Aerial and from Ploy, you do need that, actually. So, obviously, I didn't go with my initial idea of making her defensive because it's really difficult if there are almost no skills to back that up. So I just went with the supporter side. And I think that actually does work pretty well. She gets a ton of res, she gets a lot of attack. Her attack actually almost reaches 100, the max. So I think this is actually a pretty good build if you ask me. The next Fehtuber that I have asked is Oblivion Knight, and he actually commented on my latest video saying that making Rerefines is a fun idea, and I do agree. I think we can both agree on that. Making ideas or theory crafts is a neat little fun thing to do sometimes, because, we all like being creative sometimes. Now with that being said, he has recommended me Rerefine Seth and Titania, which is actually interesting because they both essentially have the same weapon. Let's start off with Seth. His base weapon comes with Triangle Depth. Here's the thing. Triangle Depth could be good, but like on its own, no, it's not. The thing is that we obviously have Triangle Depth. We have Triangle Depth as a status effect, and that is obviously better because it's being applied to the foe. And obviously, if you have an effect like Cancel Affinity, that mostly checks if the foe has an effect on like Triangle Depth. If you run Cancel Affinity status effect or even the B skill with this weapon, it's not gonna work. It actually just cancels it out completely. So there's no point for Triangle Depth to be in the weapon on its own as just a flat out effect. The Refine is also just not great. It's Speed Tactic. It's really, really weak because, we obviously have C skills like Attack Speed, Outcry Seize, we even have Bellow, all that. We have all those effects, right? All those effects are there, yet Speed Tactic. Only speed +6. Also, it's under a tactic condition. Tactic conditions are kind of difficult, especially in summer duels if you want to do like a lot of... If you want to do like a full cav team, obviously you can't really use a full cav team with tactic skills and all that kind of stuff. But the point is, you are kind of restricted to using multiple armor or movement types even, because of tactic skills. So it's really not that great actually. So I decided to go pretty interesting with his Rerefine. So the base effect enables Canto Rim +1 min 2, so that's just the normal Canto that Cavs and Flyers get, so I just decided to give him that. He also gets +5 to all stats, 23 damage, and null guard, but I also gave him Weapon Triangle Blue Style. Now, there is a reason why I did this, and that is because in Sacred Stones, he actually has a sword and lance proficiency at rank A. So I was like, you know what, why not make it a little bit interesting? Make him essentially use a lance as well. Obviously on player phase, because you can't really switch weapon types or activate a style on enemy phase. So I decided to go for blue style because, you know what, why not? Obviously, the style does work really well with the triangle depth, but like I mentioned, with all the issues with triangle depth being added to a unit flat out, like not even through a status effect from the enemy or that kind of stuff, it's not that great. It really isn't that good at all to put it on it, so I just left it out. So he just has the weapon triangle blue style, which I feel like it's already pretty good. We don't really have many units that... I mean, I say we don't have many units. We obviously just got a new one. We got Summer Balder, who can just change her weapon triangle style again as well. But this is more so a recent effect, so I think a recent thing. So I think that this is actually pretty good for Seth. Now, the Rerefine, obviously I upgraded it so it's no longer speed tactic, but now at the start of play phase or enemy phase, he will give himself and allies from 2 spaces a stack speed +6, the null penalty effect, or yeah, neutralize penalty effects, and pre-impulse for 1 turn. And he himself also gets +5 to all stats and 15 true damage reduction, just because that's the norm for demotes or any kind of unit. I feel like this weapon is actually pretty good now. The pre-impulse, we obviously don't have many units that can give pre-impulse. We obviously do have right now. We even have a skill that can give pre-impulse from staff units. Or for staff units, you know, the preempt amplify, but regardless, pre-impulse is a pretty good status effect. So making him give that for a demo, that would be pretty good. And he kind of needs that because otherwise his weapon is kind of mediocre at best. When it comes to a build, you can obviously see the idea that I'm going with. You can see that I added Arc Rival and also Impetus Guard. Now, let's do some math, okay? With Arc Rival, you get -2 cooldown if you're against a green or a red foe with the blue style. With Impetus Guard, you get -2 cooldown before your first attack if you move 3 spaces. And because Silverbrand provides the pre-impulse status effect, that's another -1. So this means he can get an instant Arc Rival, giving himself -5 cooldown before the first attack. So, obviously, because this attack gets maxed out with all the skills that you can see right there, his Arc Rival will max out at, like, I believe it's 79 damage or almost 80, because 100 attack doesn't exist, you can only go up to 99. So, 79 true damage. There's also a lot of true damage effects out there, giving him like almost 87 true damage on top of that. So he can deal almost like 160 damage from just triggering his special. And obviously what you also can see is that I gave him attack speed liberate, which does work pretty well with the fact that the Silverbrand weapon grants the pre-impulse and the nullify penalty status effect, you know? So that is gonna max out the liberate effect as well, so that's also pretty nice. I gave him the Edelgard ring because I actually, you know, that could work pretty well if you want to attack 2 different foes from 2 different colors. That Arc Rival is gonna proc twice now, so that's actually pretty good. I personally think that's pretty good, if you ask me. I did a pretty good job. Now going on to Titania, who also has a similar weapon to Seth, has triangle depth in the weapon as the base effect, and the Refine is res tactic. Like I already mentioned, all the bad or all the negative stuff, all the downsides with Seth's thing. It's the same thing with Titania. It doesn't change anything. Res tactic could be decent, I guess, because we don't really have many skills that can give res. It sounds really weird what I'm saying, but the point is that res tactic could be used in a way because you could use attack speed and other kind of stuff. But the point is, it's still not great. So, what do we do with this remix? I also gave her Canto Rim +1, which kind of does make sense because I think in it's either Path of Radiance or Radiant Dawn, I don't remember. She does come with Canto, so and she's a Cav, so it does make sense to just put Canto on her. I also gave her +5 to all stats, 15 true damage reduction, 7 HP heal when dealing damage, and I also gave her the Briar effect. Now, there's a good reason why I did the Briar effect. And the main reason is, in Path of Radiance or Radiant Dawn, I don't remember exactly, or I think in both, she actually comes with a skill called Counter. And guess what? Counter is similar to the Briar effect. We even have a skill called Counter Roar, which is basically the same thing, you know? So, I just decided to give Titania that effect, the counter effect. It is very similar to Echidna, but as a cav, you know? For a cav, you could argue that this weapon is basically a different version of Echidna's weapon, because it also has healing, damage reduction, and in a way has damage reflection. The only difference is that Titania is a cavalry unit and also has Canto, whilst Echidna obviously doesn't. And for the Refine, she now grants defense res +6, fringe bonus, and breath to herself and allies within 2 spaces at the start of player phase or enemy phase, and she gets +5 to all stats and 20 true damage during combat. I feel like this whole weapon is pretty good. The Briar effect, or the counter effect even, is a nice little effect to put on Titania, considering that she is kind of a tanky unit herself. So, and if she does take a lot of damage, she is going to retaliate back with a lot of damage. Now, with that being said, for a kit, you're probably looking at this kit and you're thinking, what in God's name did you do? Her stats are all over the place, and that was the whole point. I just wanted her to be a very tanky cav, because we don't really have many tanky cavs. The only tanky cav that comes to mind immediately was Legendary Seliph, because of the miracle and all the attack defense penalties that he can inflict and all that kind of stuff, you know? But regardless, that's the first one that comes to mind. I know that's crazy. But regardless, I feel like this build does work really well with her defensive capabilities. It does make her really tanky. Obviously, what you can see is Patience, and you know what? Patience actually does work with her high defense. And not only does it work with her high defense, it also helps with the with the counter effect in her weapon, because she obviously wants to be attacked first to obviously attack back or counter with, you know, the 40% counter effect. So Patience is there to help out, just to make sure that she actually makes use out of that skill. On top of that, I also gave her, as you can see, Attack, Res, Liberate, and Divine Spectre, which is obviously attack, defense, and res boosting. The Blue Skies in the Seal is there to just give a little bit more true damage reduction, which, funny enough, she actually gets 61 true damage reduction and 44 true damage reduction, and obviously, because of Arc Rival, 40%, and another 40% because, or not 40%, she gets the 40% counter effect in her weapon. So I think this is actually pretty good for a cavalry. We don't have many cav tanks, so I feel like this is actually pretty decent for Titania. Up next, we got Phaeology, who has suggested me Rerefine, Sharena, and Arden. Now, let's start off with Sharena, because, you know, Sharena is a release unit. She was one of the first heroes ever to be in Fae. And, obviously, she's also one of the first heroes to have a personal weapon, being Fensalir. Now, Fensalir is not that great, like the base effect at least. It is simply just threat and attack 2. It's obviously really weak, it's not that great, but you get the point. The Refine, however, does change the weapon up completely, because instead of threat and attack, it's now the dull effect. I mean, the dull effect alone, sure, it's not really that great, but honestly, dull effect is still pretty good. It's still a pretty good effect. Obviously, if she had more stats, that would be good, which she does get from the Refine. She gets speed defense +5 if adjacent to an ally because of speed defense bond. It's very simple like that. The Refine effect is meh. It's giving her essentially the stat that she is missing, but it's not enough. The dull effect is obviously pretty nice to go against foes with a lot of stat bonuses, with treachery, all that kind of stuff. That could actually work pretty well. So, what can I do to upgrade her? Well, I actually went a really unique idea for the Rerefine. I decided to go both the old and the refined version for the Rerefine. So the base effect grants true charge to herself and allies in 2 spaces at the start of turn, and then at the start of player phase, enemy phase, and after she acts, she will inflict attack, speed, defense -7 and panic on the closest foes and any foe within 2 spaces of those foes through next action, while she herself gets +5 to all stats, 22 damage, and the dull effect. Now, I know what you're thinking. Dull and panic. Really, really not a smart idea. It kind of goes against the other effect, you know, they're kind of clashing together. But here's the thing. Obviously, if the foe is inflicted with panic, their bonuses are not counted as bonuses. They're actually counted as penalties. So the dull effect will not affect the panic, you know? It will just make sure that the bonuses are penalties. Now, with the off chance that they have something like no panic, then guess what? Sharena herself is still gonna carry, or she herself is still gonna like be able to survive on her own, or at least neutralize the penalties in a way, because she's no longer converting the stab bonuses to penalties. She's now flat out negating them. So that's the whole turnaround for her. The Rerefine gives another +5 to all stats, 15 true damage reduction, and neutralizes her own stat penalties during combat. So she has like essentially full control over stat bonuses and penalties during combat. But with all that being said, I did give her one more effect, and that is if an ally within 3 spaces of her initiates combat after she has already acted, she will get another action after combat, and will also be able to use Canto again if she has already triggered, which she obviously doesn't because she doesn't come with Canto, but you get the point. Now, the whole reason why I added True Charge, because I initially wasn't gonna do that, I feel like if you have an effect like that, being able to move after an ally acts, if you want to act again and you're only going to move 2 spaces, it's not really that great. And also, your allies want to move a lot of spaces as well if you want to be in range of, you know, being able to get another action. So I decided to go True Charge for that. And obviously, the Rerefine giving her an extra action is more so a not really a reference, but it's more so trying to make her into the, the bridal Sharena, the duo Sharena, because she was the first unit to have an effect that can give her another action through allies. With that being said, I just wanted to be more based on that one. I didn't really base it on like the brave one or like the entwined version, because they give another action to herself and the ally, and I don't want to go too crazy with like a free unit. So I don't want to go too crazy with that, even though I should be, because, you know, we obviously have so many better units nowadays, but you get the point. Now, for a build, it's kind of interesting, because obviously because Sharena is one of the Asker trios, she can't get any merges, and, you know, because of that, she's actually very limited to flat visible stab buffs compared to other heroes that can get merges. And you know what? We're gonna pause for a second. We're gonna pause for a second. We're not gonna talk about the build for a second. Let me talk to Faye real quickly. Let me ask you guys something, because we obviously have the quests that basically force us to use the Asker trio. You guys want us to use the Asker trio, right? So how do you expect someone like this to beat someone like this? You get what I'm saying? It's really difficult. So my idea, Faye, is why don't you guys add the Asker trio to the Grail shop? I mean, let's be real for a second. It would work amazingly. It gives the Asker trio a chance to be, you know, competing with other older heroes, because right now they're kind of in a tricky spot because they can't get the same stats as all the other heroes. I get they're free units and all that, but you know who's also free to an extent? Legendary Fjorm, Mythic Air, Mythic Peony, all those heroes. And they can be merged. Why? Because they're in the Legendary and Mythic pool. And you get the point. Why not make the Asker trio mergeable through, you know, through freaking the Grail shop? And it gives them a chance to catch up to others. But anyways, let's unpause, let's go back to the builds. Now obviously what you can see is I gave her a Shatter Slash. Shatter Slash actually works amazing, because, you know, the weapon obviously inflicts attack speed defense -7, and Shatter Slash is essentially an attack defense sabotage effect built into it, you know? So in that sense, it actually does work extremely well. It also boosts damage by speed. It's also not 5 cooldown, it's 4 cooldown, which, you know, you could argue is whatever, but you get the point. It helps her trigger easier and, you know, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I feel like Shatter Slash is pretty good. And because she reaches a lot of speed, 88 speed is a lot, so that's going to be really good. Now, here's the thing. I gave her Favor and the Micaiah Ring, because it actually does work pretty well, because if she can move 3 spaces with True Charge, And, you know, combined with the Swift Spectre, she can make an assist, swap, attack, move back, and then an ally can attack, and then she can attack again. You get the point? So she can move forward and move forward again because of the assist, and then allies can do the rest of the job, making her life even easier in that sense. So it actually does work pretty well. Now, with that being said, this whole build doesn't really seem to be like extremely true damage or true damage reduction based, but the whole idea is that her playstyle is similar to her newer ults, you know, which I personally think makes her pretty unique, especially for a unit that is free, you know, that you can't really merge and all that kind of stuff. And please, Faye, make them mergeable, I beg, come on, just do it. But I feel like that would be a really good compensation for her. And the other hero was Arden. Now, Arden is actually also one of my favorite, one of the refines that I actually like more than the others. The base effect is a 10 might weapon brave. It's a 10 might dual face brave weapon. 10 might is, you know, is not. Here's the thing. We obviously, as of right now, we have someone like Balfus with the grappler axe. He also has a true brave weapon, and that has 11 might. Well, Arden obviously has 10, so he's already lacking something, you know? He's lacking speed, because his speed is going to get lowered, and he's lacking 1 attack, essentially. And I guess the Refine kind of further proves my point, because the Refine grants attack +4, defense +6, and inflicts guard on the foe during combat. The Refine is not bad. I think it's actually pretty good for an armored unit. The guard effect is nice. The 4 attack and 6 defense, a bit odd, but here's the thing. It does make him a bit more of a defensive hero, which, you know, for an armored unit, you kind of want that. So I guess I'm not really complaining on that sense, but it's a little bit of an odd thing. So let's just refine this weapon. So for the base effect, you could already see that it is 11 might instead of 10 might. But what it also grants is HP +5, attack defense res +6, and that is visible. He still gets the -5 speed because, honest to God, I don't think I can fix his speed. His speed is 23 going to 18. You can't really fix that, in my opinion. But his base effect also comes with 20 true damage, follow-up denial, and 7 HP heal after combat, which, you know, is pretty good. Now, the Refine is... I went with a very unique kind of Refine, because let me tell you something. Something that is common right now is effects that start at either start of enemy or player phase or enemy phase, and we also have effects that happen after acting. But I decided to go with a new condition, and that is this. So now at start of player phase or enemy phase, or after combat on enemy phase specifically, he will inflict attack, shackle, and defense shackle on foes in 3 rows and 3 columns through the next action, and will also inflict special cooldown count +1 on those foes. Whilst the Refine also gives them a flat attack defense res +6, inflicts guard on the foe, and 15 true damage reduction. If you think about it, this Refine kind of turns him into like a mini Emblem Ike because of the special cooldown count +1 effect. It does make him very defensive and all that, and make sure that the foes cannot instantly proc their special, which, to be fair, might still be possible because of, you know, what I just showed with the Seth -4, -5 cooldown. But I think that does make him pretty good. Plus, the extra healing does make him a pretty good... Plus, the healing does actually work pretty well, considering that his HP is high. And, you know, with that high HP, you kind of want to keep that follow-up ring perf active. But, hold on. Let me talk about one thing. Let's talk about the follow-up ring. Now, what is the follow-up ring? The follow-up ring gives him a guaranteed follow-up attack if his HP is 50% or higher. It's... if you compare it to, like, tier 4 fighter skills, the follow-up ring is terrible. It's not good at all. It's really just bad. You could honestly run Patience, and I don't think that even works, considering that I reduced the speed, you know? But, actually, no. Because it grants 12 because Rise Above gives 12 spell stats. So yeah, you are able to use Patience with this. But realistically speaking, the perf is not really that good. So here's the thing. I was originally gonna just do Refines, like the weapon. But, you know, I also said that perf skills need to be more up to date. and they also need to make sense with, you know, with who it's on. So we're also gonna upgrade the follow-up ring, you know what I'm saying? So let's just do that. So for follow-up ring plus, the one thing you can see is that it's 400 SP, because the normal follow-up ring was only 200 SP. I feel like unless it's arena, you guys don't care. But here's the thing. The effect, the follow-up ring plus now inflicts attack defense -7 and panic at start of play phase or any phase on any foe with 3 S3 columns. The panic is more so leaning towards the idea of if he had Panic Ploy, because Panic Ploy is HP based, and he quite literally is the unit with the highest HP stat in the game. So, you know, why not give him like a built-in Panic Ploy without the HP condition, because we know it doesn't really matter. So it doesn't really matter because his HP can probably be maxed out pretty easily. So I decided to give him that. Now, the weapon also provides -5 attack and defense on the foe, 20% of defense as true damage at true damage reduction, and it also gives him a guaranteed fall attack during combat. I actually re-added the HP condition away, because at the start of combat, if his HP is 25% or higher, he will trigger potent follow-up X during combat. And I made it very simple. If he can make a follow-up attack, his potent follow-up will only be 50%. Otherwise, it will be 100%. I mainly did this so that it gives it a purpose over using patience. I know it's kind of just adding patience to a weapon, but it's HP based instead of speed based. So I think that, you know, for Arden it kind of is fitting, considering he has the highest HP in the game. But you get the point. I think you guys get the point. I think it's also pretty nice considering that, you know, he can now actually quintuple, which I think is a funny idea. Obviously the 5th attack will only do 50% of the damage, whilst if he can just not make a follow-up attack, he will actually just attack 3 times at 100%. So I think this is actually pretty fair to, because it still gives him the follow-up attack if he can't have the guaranteed follow-up attack, because let's say, for example, follow-up denial or even no follow-up. So I feel like that's pretty fair to still give him some kind of follow-up if he can't get the normal follow-up out. So I think that's a pretty good compensation for that. Now, for a build, you know, because Arden is... Jeez, Arden almost made me choke with those stats. I'm sorry. So, obviously, you can see with Arden's bulky stats, he can easily max out his attack and defense. Which, you know, with Armored Flare, it will be a ton of special damage. And obviously, he doesn't get any special cooldown charges or anything. But realistically speaking, even if the Armored Flare triggers on the 50% potent hit, that still is like 50 damage roughly, because, you know, maximizing his defense doesn't just straight up just allows him to deal more damage. So he's gonna be completely fine with that. I also gave him Peace Save and this Counter Seal because, you know, he does actually become an amazing physical savior because of all the high defense that he has. And I also gave him the Roy Ring because, you know, because if there's a magic foe, that could be a little bit trouble for him, because he has his res is quite literally half of his defense. So it's there just to help him out survive against the other type of heroes. I think that this build is also good. I also think that the weapon is pretty strong. Making him essentially a mini Emblem Ike is gonna be pretty annoying for the enemy team, because if you want to constantly trigger your special, you're not gonna trigger your special against Arden, because it's gonna be almost impossible. Up next, we got someone who got me into making this Rerefine series, you know. It's Satachi. Ever since the Hot Take livestream, I've just been making non-stop Rerefines, and, you know, thank you, Satachi, for, you know, seeing it and letting other people give their opinion. He has actually suggested me doing Byleth and Edelgard. Funny, huh? I know why these two heroes. Let's start off with Byleth. For his base weapon, he obviously got a remix, so if we're gonna first start off before the remix, he comes with Professorial Text, which is a slaying weapon that has joint drive, no follow-up, speed-based no follow-up, and also gives him attack speed, or just not attack speed, Omni +5 to all stats. It's pretty good. It was good. It was very good back then, because the one hero that came out that was, you know, the strongest hero back then was Fallen Edelgard because of the fact that preventing follow-up attacks and all that kind of stuff. So Byleth was like a direct counter towards Fallen Edelgard. So male Byleth was actually pretty, and I mean very, very important back then. Now for his perf skill, his Sublime Heaven is special, which basically just is a stronger version of Rupture Sky. It uses 25% of his own attack instead of 20% of the foes, but it obviously doubles that value against Dragon or Beast. And in addition to that, it also has damage reduction piercing. So realistically, it literally is a stronger version of Rupture Sky. I don't really have much to say about this special. It quite literally just is a stronger Rupture Sky, which for Byleth coming with Time's Pulse, it actually is pretty important to have that. So I think that's pretty good. Now we'll go on to his remix. So his weapon still kept the slaying, but now allies get +5 attack and speed on top of the null follow-up, the speed based on follow-up effect. In another edition, it no longer is within 2 spaces, it's within 3 rows and 3 columns. Now, funny enough, I think Byleth was one of the first heroes to have this range. So, Byleth, you're the reason for skills to be this easy to use now. Now, for himself, he still gets the +5 and the speed based on follow-up, but he also gets 7 true damage on top of that. So, it's a nice little upgrade for the base effect. The Refine will now also neutralize attacks and penalties for himself and the allies within that same range. Byleth himself also gets more stats. He gets +4 to all stats, another +1 for every ally within range. He also gets full tempo, 30% damage reduction from the first hits, which also includes Brave. I personally think that this upgrade is pretty good. It made him, it actually gave him the other half of the thing that female Byleth had, because female Byleth was the tempo version. Special also got upgraded, Sublime Heaven 2. Now, obviously, one thing you can see is that he no longer comes with Time's Pulse 3, because it got replaced with Attack Speed Oath. But the thing is that his Time's Pulse was added to his special now, so now he gets the -1 cooldown at the start of turn from his special, and the special also deals 30% of attack instead of 25, and also gives 60% if it's against the Dragon or Beast. It still is that same idea of Rupture Sky better, but it also comes with Time's Pulse now. All in all, I think this is like a good remix upgrade, but as of currently, it's not insane, so we're gonna make it insane. Now, if you... one thing you can already see is that the Refine is missing, and that is because this weapon is so damn long it doesn't fit on the screen, and I feel like you guys still want to read. Who am I kidding? Fate players don't read, right? I don't even read. So, the weapon still gives slaying to himself, but now allies get +5 to all stats, 10 true damage, and full penalty neutralization instead of just attack speed. They also still get the speed based on follow-up, whilst Byleth himself also gets +5 to all stats. He gets 25 true damage instead of 7. He gets his 40% damage reduction to all attacks instead of 30% to the first hits. He also gets full penalty neutralization, just like the same for allies. And he also gets no follow-up, but it's no longer speed-based. Now, on top of all those effects, I gave him one more effect, and that is a style. I gave him Blizzard style, which is basically just a range 3 style for Byleth. Whilst the Refine, as you can see, the Refine is a lot shorter because that little part is not going to fit on the screen with the other one. The Refine grants him +12 to all stats. It still gives him tempo, but it also gives him 15 true damage reduction on all attacks and 7 HP healing when he hits the foe during combat. The Refine is obviously very tame. You're probably wondering why I did +12 to all stats instead of +10. Well, the main reason is because of the Refine in this remix gives him +4 to all stats and +1 for every ally in 3 rows, 3 columns. Now, if you play in a game with like rival domains, you're gonna have up to 7 other allies, so you can get up to +7 to all stats, +4, which is 11, and then the base effect gets +16. If I were to do +10 on this remix, he would only get +15 instead of +16 from the Refine. So I decided to go, essentially, the idea is that it's +5, +7. So he gets 12, because, math is math. So he gets +5 to all stats, because, one, I feel like it, and I don't care. we gotta make him as strong as possible, because we might as well. Now for Sublime Heaven 3, yes, we're going to Sublime Heaven 3. The special now grants -1 cooldown to himself and allies within 3 rows and 3 columns, instead of just himself if his special is at max. But also at start of player phase, enemy phase, he will give himself and allies within that same range attack liberate, speed liberate, and counter 1 for 1 turn. His special still does 30% of his own attack, but not only is it on his own attack, it can also be based on the foe's attack. Which, to be fair, I don't think it matters that much because, you know, I feel like Byleth can easily max out his attack with all the stats that he's getting from his base weapon and the kit that he's probably that I'm gonna show you in a second. So I guess it doesn't really matter for that effect, but it's just a nice little thing to have, because it also is kind of Rupture Sky in a way, because Rupture Sky is enemy's attack whilst Sublime Heaven is your attack, so why not add just both? Now, with that being said, he also gets 40% damage reduction, the Dull effect, and Potent Follow-up 100, just to make him, you know, even stronger than he already is, because we gotta go all out with Byleth. Now let's go immediately to build, and you could obviously see that his attack exceeds the max, like by a landslide. You can see that he gets over 120 attack easily, which doesn't matter because he's just gonna have 99, because that's how Fae works. One thing you could immediately notice is that I gave him Favor and the Makai Ring, and that's mainly because, you know, he needs to give even more true damage, and, you know, allies could also, you know, here's the thing, allies could also benefit from Favor, because Favor obviously gives a -1 cooldown, and Sublime Heaven also gives a -1 cooldown, so that's actually -2 cooldown effectively in total. Well, with that being said, Byleth can easily trigger a special because it's a 1 cooldown special, so he can actually deal 90 damage with a special. Yes, 90 damage with a special, and that's including all of his other skills like Rise Above, Favor, and Dual Support. It can actually go up to 120 if he goes against a Dragon or Beast. And, you know, because of the Potent Follow-up and the fact that his special is 1 cooldown, he can trigger his special twice. And another thing, because of the range 3 style, it actually helps him out in a way. Because of the Makai Ring inflicting gravity after he uses an assist, he's gonna obviously move 1 space only. Now, obviously, if you can only move 1 space, attacking from 3 spaces is gonna make up for it. You're still, in a way, you're moving 2 spaces still. So, in that sense, I feel like that's pretty good. He does give a lot of support, and with dual support, he now gives the rest of the skills that he needs to give allies, or the rest of the effects that he can give to allies, like the tempo effect, like I said. More true damage and true damage reduction. He doesn't give true damage reduction, but it's a nice little effect to give to allies, considering that he already gives a lot of true damage. And now we go on to Edelgard, and we're going for Legendary Edelgard specifically. Now, the base weapon is, you know, it's a 19 might weapon essentially, which inflicts attack defense -6 and has follow-up denial if she is not adjacent to an ally. Here's the thing, these effects are pretty good, but the problem is that she is an armored unit, so being solo is kind of difficult to pull off, especially at the start of the match, you know, because you're gonna start near your allies all the time. With Raging Storm, before the remix, obviously, it grants her another action after combat if she initiates combat and if she is solo. Then it also gives her a guaranteed follow-up attack if she is solo and against a dragon or beast foe. It's a weird condition if you ask me. I don't see why they really added that. I guess they just wanted to add a little extra thingy that is lore based, which I guess makes sense. But a guaranteed follow-up attack if you are solo and against a dragon or beast is really restrictive, and it's really not that good. Luckily, the remix makes up for it, but we're going to talk about the weapon first. The weapon now gives 30% damage reduction to the first attack. Sadly, not the brave hits, but I think it's fine. It still prevents the follow-up attack, and, you know, that actually does work well with the 30% damage reduction if that only triggers on the first attack. So, in that sense, it is pretty nice to have. So, thank you, Faye, for doing that. The condition is also easy to pull out because it's no longer just that you need to be solo. It's solo if it's solo or if the foe initiates combat. Now, for the Refine, she inflicts another attack and defense -5 on the foe. She also gets 15% 25% of her attack as true damage, and also gets breath during combat. It's pretty good for her. It actually makes her offensive capabilities even better because she can proc the special. She is, because back then she came with Bonfire, so she kind of was in a weird spot for that. Because her special doesn't necessarily trigger on the second combat if the foe can't counter, but regardless, it's a nice little thing to have. And then comes Raging Storm 2, which still has the extra action after combat if solo. It's whatever. It's still another action after combat. But the other effect is that she now inflicts attack defense -5 and gets a guaranteed follow-up attack if she is healthy or is not adjacent to an ally. And in addition, if she goes against a dragon or beast foe, she also gets no follow-up. I feel like the no follow-up part is okay. I feel like the only problem is that if the foe has an effect like no follow-up, the guaranteed follow-up attack will just be flat out negated, you know? Even if you have your own no follow-up effect even if you have your own no follow-up effect, it doesn't neutralize the foe's no follow-up. So it's a whatever effect. It's really minuscule. So I gotta upgrade this obviously because it's outdated. So the weapon now provides slaying because why not? It makes her better. Her base effects are now like converted into a Crux type effect because now she inflicts attack defense res -6 on foes within 3 rounds and 3 columns. The follow-up denial also is applied to that, so those foes cannot make a follow-up attack. And now she will also inflict guard on those foes during combat. Whilst Edelgard herself gets 40% damage reduction on all attacks and 7 HP healing after combat. Whilst for the Rerefine, she no longer inflicts attack defense penalties, but she will instead gain 11 attack defense res, 25 true damage, 15 true damage reduction, and 15 true damage reduction against specials. She also still keeps her breath effect, and now she also gets full damage reduction piercing when she triggers her special. I feel like this weapon is actually great defensive support and amazing offensive support for herself. The attack defense, or not even the attack defense penalties, the follow-up denial and guard effect being applied on foe is pretty nice. Guard is actually pretty good against foes with high cooldown specials, and if they don't have null guard, you know. So that is going to be extremely nice for the defensive purpose. And then Edelgard obviously getting even more true damage, and even true damage piercing with the special proc. It makes her really, really strong, honestly. Now for Raging Storm 3, which is also for SP skill because it's a B skill. At the start, will now inflict Defense Shackle, Exposure, and Null Miracle on the closest foes at the start of turn and after acting. It will also inflict it on foes in 2 spaces of them. She now gets another action after initiating combat, regardless of who is adjacent to her. She still does inflict the attack defense penalty and the guaranteed follow-up attack, and she still gets the guaranteed follow-up attack, but now she also gets true damage and true damage reduction based on 15% of her own attack. Now, lastly, I replaced the no follow-up effect. If she is adjacent to only one ally or none at all, or she is against a dragon or beast foe, she will trigger potent follow-up X during combat. Now, potent follow-up X is going to be similar to Patience. If she can make a follow-up attack or attack twice, it will only be 50%. If she can't, it will be 100%. But there is a caveat. If she goes against a dragon or beast, her potent follow-up will be 100% regardless of if she can make a follow-up attack or not. Because like I mentioned with the remixed Raging Storm 2, the partial no follow-up effect is nice to have, but obviously won't work if your natural guaranteed follow-up attack doesn't work anymore. So in that sense, I just wanted to give her potent follow-up because that is, one, gonna make up for her lost follow-up attack, and in a way is a stronger version of no follow-up against dragon or beast. So she doesn't have no follow-up anymore, but instead she has potent follow-up, which is 100% against dragon or beast. So I think that's still gonna be really nice to have. Now obviously with this build that you see right here, her attack is again maxed out, and with Raging Storm she will deal the max amount of damage, which is 14 true damage and true damage reduction. But with that, she deals a total of 51 true damage, and then if she triggers a special, because of her high defense, she will trigger another 103 damage, along with piercing through the foe's damage reduction effects because of, you know, Aymr. I can't pronounce that weapon's name, but the weapon obviously having the damage reduction piercing effect, it makes the special also pretty really strong. Now, with a high cooldown, I gave her Erica Ring. The Erica Ring doesn't really help her trigger the special during combat, or at least during the first combat, but it could help her set it up pretty nicely for either her follow-up attack or her second combat going forward, because she doesn't get Brave on the second combat anymore, but the special will be ready on the second combat if the foe doesn't counter. So, with that being said, I feel like this would be pretty strong. I feel like this build does make her a pretty strong armored unit, because here's the thing, armored units are not really like meant to be offensive most of the time. Edelgard is obviously the one exception, because of the fact that she obviously introduced a lot of effects like this, the true charge and all that kind of stuff, and you know the extra action is also something that's, you know, related, is only for Edelgard. So she obviously needed all that upgrade to do that, and I think I did pretty well. So that is Edelgard for you guys. Now we got the last two heroes left, which was suggested by Z Shadow, who recommended Hector and Sothis. Let's start off with Hector. Hector's Thunder Armads grants defense +3 and denies the foe's follow-up if there are more allies than there are foes within 2 spaces. I mean, sure. Like, for that, you know, all that condition for that effect, it's not really that great, if you ask me. It's meh. It's really meh, if you ask me. But the thing is, for an armored unit, it does make sense because you want to be near your allies, especially now because of the Savior skills. But the thing is that it doesn't really work that well, because obviously he comes with a Perf C skill. So you can't really use Savior if you want to use his Perf skill. Now, Ostia's Pulse simply just grants -1 cooldown to all allies at the start of turn 1. But it's under a tactic condition. So the thing is that the tactic condition, I don't mind it that much. I still don't like it, in my opinion. I also don't like this version of the perf, because -1 cooldown at the start of turn 1. Obviously, it was back then, so it was obviously not that strong. But the refine does make, or not the refine, the remix does make both weapon and the C skill a lot better. The base effect no longer is based on having multiple allies or even more allies than foes. You only now need one ally within 3 spaces to get attack defense -5 and obviously the same follow-up denial. And the refine inflicts attack defense -5 and gives 40% damage reduction from the foe's first attack. Again, it's first attack, not all attacks, but honestly, it doesn't really matter that much, because like I said, if we're talking about flat combat stuff, preventing a follow-up attack and then only reducing the first attack makes sense, because if you don't get hit by a follow-up attack, who cares about reducing that? So I guess that makes sense. Ostia's Pulse 2 also is basically fully reworked in a way, because now it gives himself and all allies on the map defense res +6 every single turn. It no longer gives it at the start of turn 1. And it also gives -1 cooldown, but only if the specials at the maximum cooldown. So it's basically times pulse. It still is under the tactic condition. Here's the thing: it's okay and all that, but I still don't care about the tactic condition. Another thing is that he still lacks Savior. He's not really a strong armored unit, in my opinion. So we're gonna obviously fix that. The base effect now grants Slaying because funny, and it also comes with built-in Warp Bubble, 25 true damage. 40% damage reduction on all attacks instead of just the first attack. And the attack defense penalty is now -6, and it still has the follow-up denial effect. Whilst the Refine grants himself +10 to all stats, and allies within 3 or 3 columns +5 to all stats. He also gives both to himself and allies null guard, and full damage reduction piercing when the special triggers. And on top of that, Hector gets 15 true damage reduction and 15 more true damage reduction when the special procs, when the fully special procs, and for that they're both including the AoEs. It would make him a very reasonable tank with all the damage reduction. But you know, the main thing that he does well is to provide support, but not just through his weapon, but also from his C skill that I upgraded. Here's the thing: I went a little crazy with Ostia's Pulse 3. Now, with Ostia's Pulse 3, it comes with far safe built into it, because, you know, because Hector comes with this encounter, it would only make sense to put this encounter, or not this encounter, far safe on Hector, you know, because it obviously makes sense. I believe also every Hector that it comes with a save skill has far save specifically, not even P save or M save or all that kind of stuff. He still gives himself and allies the defense res +6 and times pulse effect, but it no longer has the tactic condition. But now, in addition to all that, he will give Lagoose Pulse, which is a status effect that will give -2 cooldown before the foe's first attack. Now, I don't know about you, but you could obviously stack this with the Lagoose B skill, getting -4 cooldown before the foe's first attack. Additionally, he gives himself attack defense res +5, Null Sea Disrupt, 7 true damage, and 7 true damage reduction, which also includes AoE specials, and will also have the Briar effect. If you put it in perspective, this whole weapon is basically like Ostia's Pulse plus Briar Far Save, with the Ostia's Pulse simply giving one more status effect, that being Lagoose Friend, which honestly would turn anyone into a disgusting counter unit with the special, you know? And considering that his weapon gives allies damage reduction piercing on special proc, and even no guard, I'm just saying, it could be an insane combo. It would work extremely well. Now, when it comes to a build, I wanna quickly say something. With just his weapon and C skill alone, he can already lower his cooldown by a total of 4. 1 through Slaying, another one because of the Times Pulse from the C skill, and then another 2 from Lagoose Pulse. Now, obviously, you just need 1 more hit, and then you could obviously trigger Armored Flare instantly on the counter, which obviously, because of the fact that his defense is almost maxed out, it will be over 100 damage because of the fact that, you know, you could also use an Emblem Ring to go even further with that. I did give him Patience because even though, unironically, it does help him get a guaranteed fall attack, which he obviously doesn't have right now, it also works for player facing, because it will make sure that the foe attacks first, and like I just mentioned, you want to get hit first to get that Armored Flare counter, and, you know, that obviously does help. I did put the distant counter in the seal because, you know, the far save is in the C skill, and otherwise it just wouldn't work at all. And considering that he comes with no C, he could easily deal with range foes, and with just a special, he's gonna annihilate them. I did give him the Roy Ring in addition. I don't think he needs it because he's gonna get he does have a ton of damage reduction and all that, but in the off chance that he gets in the off chance that he goes against someone like, you know, Legendary Leon or like Aided Lute even, she's gonna obviously survive. At least I think she's gonna I think he's gonna survive. Well, we'll see, but you get the point. Now, we got one more hero left, and this is the biggest one in my opinion. It is Sothis. Now, the weapon, I'm gonna save it for the refine or the remix part, and you'll see why in a second. So, for her perf skill, it's called Sirius. It's a special again. It's a 2 cooldown special. If it triggers, it will deal 30% of her speed as damage and will also heal 30% of damage dealt. To be fair, it's not bad. It does cover like 2 like kind of important things, healing and damage dealing. So but the thing is that it's only 30%, so it's not a lot, but the upside is that it's 2 cooldown, which as of currently at this meta, it isn't really that great because we have emblem effects scaling off max cooldown and even Aria. So a low, like 2 cooldown special isn't really not that great. Now let's go immediately to the remix, and here's the thing. You can obviously, let's talk about the base effect of the weapon. The base effect, it honestly is kind of unique. It's Distant Counter and the Dragon Shield, which is basically just dragon, a nullifying dragon effect in this. The thing is that she wasn't the first one to come with this effect. The first one was Garen, obviously. Garen, you know, Garen from Fates. So it's really not that unique. But anyways, you might be thinking that's what the base effect is. But no, even before the refine, this was the base effect. The base effect was Distant Counter and the Dragon Shield. So they didn't really upgrade they didn't really upgrade her base weapon at all. And now the refine, that's the new thing. The refine is all the new things that she gets. and she only gets +4 to all stats and 40% damage reduction. Faye, are you kidding me? Let's go a little bit off topic, right? You see this refine right here? This is Hilda's. You see all these effects that it has? Notice that the refine port right there below. What effect is that? Oh, attack speed +5 and 40% damage reduction? Wait, what does Sothis get again? 4 to all stats and 40% damage reduction. It's the same refine, but Sothis's is just 4 to all stats. And here's the thing. With Hilda, she gets so many more effects in the base effect. Why is Sothis not getting the same treatment? You might be thinking that, oh, maybe Hilda came out later and she obviously got more effects. No! Hilda actually came 1 month before Sothis. So this is actually just a whole lot of bullshit that she's been getting. So this, what she got, is just very underwhelming compared to Hilda. I'm not saying that Hilda doesn't deserve all these effects, but if you're gonna make a normal 5-star unit have this many effects and a mythic hero have barely anything, what's the point? What's the point of upgrading her? This is the remix as well. This is actually just insulting to Sothis. But here's the thing. I might be exaggerating to a point, because what if Sirius Plus got a huge upgrade? Yeah, then maybe it's justified for the weapon. Sirius Plus just boosts the values from 30 to 35. And also comes with built-in null guard. I mean, do you want me to say anything more? Let's look at Hilda's Refine again. Look at this! And what Sothis got is this! That's it! She got nothing else! As a matter of fact, I personally think that she got nerfed, because she actually came with Wrath before this. Now she has no C Disrupt. Now here's the thing, Wrath was arguably the only thing that would allow her to deal more damage. Now it's gone. She's not gonna counter more often, but deal fuck all damage. You get what I'm saying? So, they really didn't do Sothis's remix any justice. Now it's up to me to do that, because this is a huge joke. So let's start off with the weapon. It still has the disencounter and the dragon shield, but now she gets a phantom speed +7, 80% damage reduction against AoE specials, 5+5 to all stats, 25 true damage, 40% damage reduction against all attacks, no longer the first attack, another 15 true damage reduction against all attacks, and lastly, if she has more speed than the foe, she will prevent the foe from triggering their special during combat. And the Refine gives Slaying, because I feel like that's really necessary for a low cooldown special, because we might as well go all the way with the low cooldown. She also gets +10 to all stats and full no follow-up, which is not speed-based. And at the start of player phase, enemy phase, she will give herself and allies with 2 spaces, Empathy and Reflex. Reflex might not be the best effect for her, because even though she does reduce damage by a lot, she doesn't really take a lot either to reduce, you know, because she's gonna negate the special, which means that she's not gonna get a ton of damage reduction. But, you know, at the off chance that it still is, you know, gonna proc, or at the off chance that she does still take a ton of damage, Reflex is there to help out. But now we go on to Sirius++. The speed damage is now 40% instead of 35, and the healing is also 40%, but it's no longer based on damage dealt, it's based on 40% of her max HP. Now, here's the thing, unless you deal 99 damage to a foe that has had 99 HP, it doesn't matter about that. So I feel like guaranteeing a big chunk of your own health to be restored regardless every single time, that's gonna be a lot better than dealing maybe a small portion of the damage you dealt because the foe has like 1 health, you know? In addition, at the start of player phase or enemy phase, she will give herself and either her support partner or the ally with the highest speed, attack liberate, speed liberate, dodge, and miracle as a status effect. Now, the miracle status effect is a once per player phase and enemy phase miracle effect. I didn't want to make it too strong, because if I made it the once per combat, that would just be like, you know, better than the Roy ring. And considering that Sothis gives this status effect to 1 ally, I know it's not all allies on the map, but my point still stands. Giving it to an ally specifically could help them out a lot. I think it's going to be really strong. And, you know, to top it all off, she gets 40% damage reduction, null guard, pre-impulse, and 50% deep wounds reduction. I think the main thing that you can see here is that she is a reflex miracle unit, and there's also dodge in, from the special, so she's gonna reduce even more damage, and because of Sirius Plus giving another 40% to all attacks, she's gonna be able to reduce a ton of damage. And because of Phantom Speed, the dodge effect is probably gonna be benefiting even more. So, when it comes to damage reduction, let me just show you the build immediately. I know the build is very unoriginal because I feel this is quite literally just Emblem Roy's kit. The build might be uninspiring, boring, unoriginal, all that kind of stuff, but it works for her. Now, because of the weapon giving 40% damage reduction, the special giving 40% damage reduction, the dodge giving another potential 40% damage reduction, the Ike Ring giving another 40% damage reduction, and the counter roar seal, giving 30%, she gets a total of 90% damage reduction, and then a flat 37 on top of that, which, with reflex, is obviously going to be a fuck ton of damage being reflected back. Now, obviously, the special does not, the fully special cannot trigger, so maybe the damage will not be substantially insane, but she's still gonna reduce, she could reduce 100 plus damage if she does. Now, here's the thing. You might be a bit confused about counter roar being in the seal, because you probably would think that it doesn't really stack with reflex, but actually it does. Because the thing is that reflex and counter, or briar, how I like to say it, are two separate effects. So reflex is obviously dealing damage based on the damage you reduced, whilst counter is damage you deal back that you would take unreduced. So you get what I'm saying? So combined, you essentially deal 130% of reduced damage back to the foe. And, because of the null guard and the pre-impulse, she's gonna always counter with a special proc. Now, I know the special will probably not deal a ton of damage. I know it's 40 damage at most. But something that the special also provides is healing. So, essentially, this whole build, or the special, makes her heal in all the time, makes her reflect almost all the damage she takes. She has Miracle to make sure that she doesn't die at all. So, do I dare to say that this build essentially makes her unkillable? And I think I did a pretty good job, this is justice for Sothis poor remix and all that kind of stuff. So this was obviously a big upgrade from what she has. This upgrade went from compared to, here's the thing, the base effect was obviously a 3 out of 10. The remix made her a 2.5, and this remix, in my opinion, made her a 10 out of 10 because of the fact that you quite literally can't kill her. The special negation, all the damage reduction, and the reflex, and the counter roar, you're not gonna be able to survive or even kill her. So I think I did a pretty good job. And with that being said, that is all 10 heroes that I've re-refined by the Fate community. Thanks to all Fehtubers that I've mentioned for suggesting me heroes to re-refine. I do want to keep doing this because I like the idea of making older heroes better with not arcane weapons, and just by upgrading their personal stuff. If you guys want to see more, let me know. Even put in the comments who you want to see next. I might do them next time. And yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed this. Check out everyone. I've checked every Fetuber that I've mentioned. Check everyone in the description. I've put all the channels. And have a good day, and I'll see you guys later. Goodbye!